It was a warm spring day when I first saw Dachau. Fields were green and birds were chirping in nearby trees. But as my fellow prisoners and I marched through those camp gates, the most horrific stench overpowered us. We looked around and instantly knew why. Heaps and heaps of dead bodies rotting in the sun. It was April of 1945 and I was 23 years old. Starvation had shriveled my body as well as my hopes. At this point in the war, the Nazi camps were in complete disarray. Allied bombs had forced the Germans to scramble, and the SS soldiers were so worried about surviving that they no longer paid us much attention. There was no food, no roll call, or anything resembling a functioning prison. If a deranged inmate screamed, "Bread!" all of us would attack each other, flailing our bony hands and bony elbows, only to discover that there was nothing. For several days, we lay around that camp, starving, until one day the SS soldiers herded us into these open cattle cars that had barbed wire for sealing. And then they just shuttled us away by train. One night, the train stopped in the middle of a forest. Snow began to gently fall from the sky, and it settled on my eyelashes. I was hungry. I was really cold, but I felt strangely at peace. Gunfire shattered the stillness. Germans and Allies began shooting. All around me, prisoners were dropping as bullets were ripping through the cattle cars. I fell to the floor, listening to the thud of metal-piercing flesh as angry shouts and spine-tingling screams filled the air. Then, as quickly as it had started, it stopped. Silence returned, dawn rose over the hills, and the snow continued to gently fall. My friend Yitzhak and I were laying on the floor with our hands over our heads, waiting for the slightest sound. And then we heard it. Coming from the distance ahead of us in the cars, loud, jubilant voices, "Wir sind frei! We are free at last!" We lifted our heads. I looked over at Yitzhak. He had a baffled expression on his face, and I can only assume my own mirrored his. I looked around. There wasn't an SS soldier in sight. "Let's not move yet," I whispered to Yitzhak. "We've got to be cautious." We lay there for a while, listening to the others step down from the trains, running, screaming, singing, and laughing in the snow. I lifted my head and saw them, my fellow prisoners, my fellow Jews. My fellow Jews buzzing in all directions. One man was carrying a huge sack of food on his bony shoulders. Another died in front of me from pure elation, his cold fingers still clutching that loaf of bread. I felt the chill in the air. I felt the floor below my body. I felt my friends lying beside me. And then I felt tears. I was starving, I was really cold, and I was infested with lice. But for the first time since 1939, my life was my own. Thank you.